Hi, Gerhard Bloom, once again, looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So let's look at this issue of collective punishment. Tucker Carlson, with whom I have the greatest amount of respect, and I agree with him on many fronts, but on this notion of collective punishment. Yes, in a recent interview, he casually remarks that, the bombings, the strategic allied bombings of Germany and Japan, Tokyo and the atomic bombs, collective punishment. This is absolute nonsense. Second World War was a war against, fascist tyranny. Millions of people died. And yes, in the strategic bombing campaigns, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of innocent lives of Germans and Japanese were lost. This is a tragedy of war. You hear people talking about the tragedy of war? This is the tragedy of war. Absolutely unavoidable. The strategic allied bombings were intended to utterly disrupt and destroy, the imperial Japanese war machine and the German Nazi war machine and its industries that are churning out weapons of war. So yes, in Tokyo, in one night, about 100,000 people died. The homes are built largely of wood and paper, set aflame, and as it happened, there was a major windstorm, utterly destroyed the city. But within Tokyo, the war industries were dispersed throughout, civilian population. So it was bombed. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the atomic bombs. Oh, a war crime, all those innocent people. Yes, the innocent people died. Here's a startling fact. Analysts looking at this situation predicted that about 1 million American soldiers would have died were it not for the use of those atomic bombs and the subsequent surrender of Japan. Yes, 1 million lives. This is no inflated or exaggerated estimate. No. And what's more, between 1.5 million and 5 million Japanese would have died, many of whom would have been civilians. Yes, millions of Japanese civilians would have died. Couldn't they have sued for peace, without an absolute surrender? Yes, Japan, as it happens, was looking for diplomatic ways of ending the war without complete capitulation. The Allies had learned after the end of the First World War, where the Versailles Treaty and Germany, surrendered, and yes, devastating war reparations that were unfair and set the ground for the resentment and later World War II. But part of the missing piece here was the failure of the Allied parties in the First World War to force Germany to an absolute unconditional surrender and dismantle its war machine. There was no Allied occupation of Germany after the First World War. So in the Second World War, the Allies, carefully discussing this, would absolutely not take anything but the absolute surrender of Germany and Japan. The only concession they made to Japan was they could keep the emperor in place, because diehards within the Japanese military would not have surrendered even after the atomic bombs. And as it was no simple matter to get Japan to surrender, right, unconditionally, after the atomic bombs. So the strategic Allied bombings, it ended the war. And yes, absolute unconditional surrender. And that was the reason why the Allies were able to go into Germany and Japan, new constitutions, dismantling, the war machine, imperial Japanese war machine, and in Germany, that fascist National Socialist government utterly uprooted, turned both Germany and Japan liberal democracies. This has very good, why am I talking about this? Because you have deluded leftists talking about, the Israeli invasion of Gaza. This is collective punishment. I don't deny innocent civilians are being killed, although I don't accept for a minute the inflated numbers provided by the Gaza Health Ministry. Just like UNRWA, the Gaza Health Ministry is absolutely under the thumb of Hamas. And I've seen more than enough videos, showing this oppression theater, right? Ridiculous parodies supposed to convince me of some latest brutal atrocity on the part of Israeli soldiers. No. So yes, innocent civilians are being killed. Again, tragedy of war, utterly necessary. And why? Why won't Israel accept anything but the absolute unconditional surrender of Hamas and its dismantlement? Because having learned the lessons of history, they evacuated Gaza 2005, right? Absolute control of Gaza over to the Palestinians. What did they do? They elected Hamas, a genocidal, eliminationist, rejectionist, fascist organization. They have to utterly destroy Hamas. And Hamas embeds itself in civilian areas. Oh, but they're bombing mosques and schools and hospitals. And that's against international law. International is very clear on this matter, right? You use an otherwise protected building or institution to further your military aims, and it can become a legitimate military target. There's a degree of judgment necessary here. If it's militarily necessary, right? If you can't just skirt around this facility, there's some guy in a mosque shooting, you can. If you can avoid it. But if they are storing weapons in there and there's a tunnel underneath this mosque, you take that damn thing out and it's perfectly legal. If it's militarily necessary, it's legal. So yes, bombings, hospitals, schools, and mosques. So this has to continue. And just like the Allies occupied Germany and Japan post-World War II, Israel is going to have absolutely no choice but occupy Gaza. For generations, these Palestinians have been breastfed on, genocidal, militant, rejectionist, eliminationist ideology. Do yourself a favor. You don't have to trust me. Look on YouTube for the videos of cartoons being played to little kids about killing Jews, and the school books in Palestinian schools teaching jihad and martyrdom. Awful. And yes, the vast majority of the Palestinians absolutely cheered on the Hamas slaughter, rape, killing, and sexual mutilation of women on October 7th. Cheered. And they robustly support the attack. So no, there's no two-state solution. Here's another surprising fact. One area where the Israelis and the Palestinians agree, there's no two-state solutions. The peaceniks, slaughtered in that dance festival, these are peaceniks, right? Two-state solutions, they'll free the Palestinians from oppression. Absolutely nobody, except, very deluded individuals, a small, microscopic minority, think there's anything approximating a two-state solution. And the Palestinians, they have never, ever accepted a two-state solution. So no two-state solution. So the world has a choice here. It can be, militant Islamic ideology, yet another, tyranny and authoritarian tyranny in the Middle East, or you can have, Israel, the only liberal democracy in the region. So that's the choice. And so I know what side I'm on. I'm on the side of humanity and civilization, not civilizational barbarism and atrocity. And so Tucker Carlson, I don't know what the hell he's talking about here. The Allies, not mass war criminals. There may have been, war crimes on some minor scale. It happens in every war. But no, the Americans and the Allies were not. Do yourself a favor. Do some research. Yeah, everybody knows about the Nazi atrocities and utterly horrific. Very few people, vanishingly few people know that Japan, thousands and thousands of women were forced into sexual slavery, serving, Japanese soldiers during the Second World War. Japan was